But nevertheless, I just thought, as a writer, I'd been writing short stories for a long time, and I thought, I can write in this format that would end up as pictures and sound on a wall.
Yeah.
It was another challenge for me. So I got a little book like Sid Feld's How to Write Screenplays, and for 3 or 4 years while I was practicing law, I wrote 5 or 6 screenplays, and all sorts of genres, from thriller to, more family-oriented fare.
But that's so very different from writing a novel.
It's very different.
The entire technical process.
But it's still a story.
It's still a story.
It's a story in 3 acts, and you have to tell a tale that's going to keep people's attention. But you have to know, to hit your mark. So you've got 10 pages to set the story up, because each page is about a minute of film.
Did it help you to focus as a novelist? Did it help you to focus the drama of scenes?
It did, and I tell you, working with people out in Hollywood even made that stronger impression on me. I mean, I've sat in directors' meetings where I'm on one side with my script, and you got like 6 people on the other side, producers and a director, and they are firing questions at you and challenging you on every word in your script. Why does it have to be written this way? Why is this character delivering this dialogue? How are you going to get out of this scene? What's the purpose of this scene?
Right.
You may not realize it, but a Hollywood movie, every movie you're ever going to see in your life is a 3-act movie. First act sets up the stuff. The second act is the longest act, and the third act resolves, and you have a 5-minute wrap-up. And that's every movie you're going to see. So you have to know where your marks are. And if your first act is longer than your second act, they will laugh you out of town because they'll obviously know you're not a professional about it. But every scene in a movie usually has at least 2 purposes. It's so expensive to shoot a movie, everything has to be very economical and very efficient. Mm-hmm. And I think being a screenplay writer for so many years has made me more efficient as a novelist.
You make it sound so wearying, though. I mean, that there's so much work you're doing to put very little on the page, where as a novelist you could work that same amount of effort and it can all be on the page and you can control it.
I like being a novelist more because you are sort of the top of the mountain. You're it. And in Hollywood, you exist somewhere below the belly of a parasite.
Right.
And that's just the way Hollywood is. And even Bill Goldman has won 2 Academy Awards.
He's wonderful.
And a great guy. And I lost Bill Goldman at Washington National Airport. That's another story. But unfortunately, I found him, and he was fine. And then I sort of had to tell him a lie to sort of extricate myself from an issue. But even a guy like him, when he did Absolute Power, he called me up. And he had been working on the draft after draft after draft when Castle Rock Studios hired him. And the script was just from the book. Everything in the book was in the script. And he was very faithful to it. And he had actually called me up, and I could hear him typing, and he would ask me questions about, what did I think of this? What did I think of that? Yeah. And then he called me up one day, and he said, I have some great news for you, and I have some awful news for you. It's like, okay, well, give me the great news first. And he said, the great news is that legendary filmmaker Clint Eastwood has signed on to star, direct, and produce Absolute Power, the hat trick in L.A.
It's called a green light.
It's called a green light. The movie's going to get made. Yeah. Congratulations. And I was like, wow, Clint Eastwood. I got on the phone and called everybody I'd ever known in my whole life. I was like, Mrs. Dugan, I had you in first grade. I have got some wonderful news. And then I said, what's the bad news? He said, well, the bad news is that legendary filmmaker Clint Eastwood has signed on to star, direct, and produce your movie. I'm sorry, your book is gone.
Yeah, that's true, too.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
It is. And Clint's...
You might get invited on the set.
Yeah, we did that, and we got to do all that stuff. But he wanted to be the hero in the movie, and they had sent him the script and the book to play the detective, Seth Frank. He didn't want to play the detective. He wanted to play the burglar. And in the book, the burglar doesn't make it through the whole book.
But Clint Eastwood doesn't die.
Clint Eastwood doesn't die. I mean...
He kills, but he doesn't die.
I think the only movie Clint Eastwood has ever died in was High Plains Drifter, and even then he came back and kicked the crap out of everybody.
Right.
As a ghost.
Right. It was a romantic death.
It was very.
So, back then, I'm sure that before you start every book and you look at that blank page, you're probably not even convinced you're going to get to the end. But if we go back to that first book, if somebody had said to you, well, in 2007, you will have published just about a book a year.
That's
daunting.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that was going to take place. After Absolute Power sold, and that was just surreal for me because up to that point, mostly what I had experienced as a writer was rejection at a lot of different levels.
And you've had no rejection since then?
No, I've had rejection since then. Yeah, not for novels.
But still,
but
other
things, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's stupid.
We're not talking about your. Not talking talking about your personal life.
Yeah, but it's like screenplay writing. You know, I've sold scripts since then, but
Well,
I've
just
had a
that
lot
people
rejected.
assume you have, you're on the New York Times bestseller list, and you've had a movie made, and nobody's going to say no to you ever again.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. It's creative content, and it's what, you know, they want to buy what you're selling.
Do you have the same team now that you had then? I mean, in terms of your editor, your publisher,
I have the same American publisher. I have 41 different publishers for all the foreign languages.
Yeah.
I have the same American publisher, although they've gone through some ownership. It was Time Warner,
right,
and now it's Hachette, which is a huge French conglomerate that bought Time Warner's book group.
But your editor has been the same?
Well, no, I've gone through a number of editors because they either left or retired. And I have an editor now who I really like a lot. Although I have to tell you,
you don't have your Maxwell Perkins?
No, I don't.
Is that important?
Apparently, it has not been that important. Actually,
well,
I think.
If you ever felt that, because you probably hear about writers who do have one person who's stuck with them the whole way.
And with me, you know, I have to say my best editor is my wife. Michelle reads the pages before anyone else.
Well, there you go.
And she's all I've ever needed. So the rest of the guys, you know, I just let them hang around.
I mean, how quickly do you want something read that you've written?
Immediately.
Immediately.
Yeah, I do.
So it helps then that it's your.
Yeah. But she doesn't read it immediately.
Yeah.
You know?
Wait, I'm doing something.
She's got a million other things to do, but she gives great critical. In fact, the book that I just finished the book for the spring of next year, and it's an international thriller for the first time I take you overseas. And the first 100 pages she read, and quite frankly, she really didn't like. They were not keeping her attention.
And what do you do with that?
I rework it.
You really do?
Oh, yeah. I rewrote the entire 100 pages.
Do you just hear her criticisms, constructive or otherwise, and then just take it and go back and work? Or do you hash it out with her in a conversation?
No, I take it back and rework it, and then I'll give her the pages again.
You want to just put it on the page. You don't want to talk about it.
And really, I had sort of felt the same way about those pages, but her saying the same conclusion sort of validated it.
Have you ever gotten well into one of your books and said this isn't working at all and have to go back?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example of that. It was a book called Last Man Standing, and it was probably one of my most complex novels and my longest novel. And this book was supposed to be delivered, say, in May of 2001. And I had been distracted on a lot of different things, and this book was all over the place. So in March of 2001, I had 120,000 words written. And everybody was telling me, and I knew they were right, that this book was not working. It just wasn't working. So I went to my office one day, and I sat down, and I cut 110,000 words out of the book. I had 10,000 words left, and I had to deliver this book in 6 weeks. And finally I got my head on right, and I sat down and wrote 140,000 words in 6 weeks for this book. And it was my biggest bestseller, and I got starred reviews from every review service out there saying it was my finest novel. There's no perfect place to write except in your head. And once you get your head right, you can be very productive. But that was very frustrating for me, that I had wasted all that time by being distracted. And ever since then, I really tried to stay focused. Because as a writer, it's sort of the level I'm at. You get pulled in so many different directions. I could be in a different city every day if I accepted, speaking engagements that people wanted to be somewhere. And I've just learned to say no a lot more.
Well, and you have a life. And,
I do.
And you have to live that. But how is the process then different from that first book and your last book?
Yes, some of it is the same, and that never will change. People think that, you have inspiration, and you do. But I've always thought that inspiration is not this thing that just happens. Inspiration has been percolating inside your subconscious for a long time, and when it bubbles finally to the surface and you think you've just had it, you've had it for a long time.
Is that your muse?
I think that is partly my muse. And you have to think about these things for a long time, and you have to be very, very creative and imaginative and also adaptive, and you have to be flexible. And not every word you set is set in stone. You have to, sometimes things don't work, things have to be changed. I've sat down to write a book where I thought this would be the major character. And after 100 pages, you've got like a Hermione Granger going, no, pick me over here, because I'm more interesting.
And they come alive for you.
They really do.
They start telling you where they want to go. And
they really come alive.
But is that the magic moment?
Well, there are a number of magic moments, but you also have to realize that there are highs and lows in writing a book. And I know that I'm going to experience them all. Some days I feel great. This is the best thing I've ever written. 3 days later, I was like, this is junk.
Yeah.
I can't believe I've written this. I mean, it's not working at all. Yeah. And it's like going from, sky high to, wanting to check yourself into rehab.